We could create a whole course on simply designing a vSphere virtual network with the vSphere distributed switch. vSphere architects can create very complex vSphere network designs, but in this course, we're going to try to keep it relatively simple because you first need to understand what a vSphere distributed switch is, how to create one, and perform basic administration. So let's start off here with a simple design. At the Wired Brain Coffee Company, they're going to start off with a 3-host cluster, and those 3 hosts are going to be connected to a production distributed virtual switch. The production DV switch will be used for the management virtual adapter for management traffic going to and from your ESXi hosts, and then they'll add a distributed virtual port group for virtual machines. That's where the virtual machines will connect to the production DV switch. And of course, the production DV switch will connect to each of the 3 hosts, and it will also require uplink adapters that the host will provide so the production DV switch can access the network. And then we'll also add a storage DV switch. And of course, each of the hosts will connect to this storage DV switch, and it will have uplinks to the physical network. This storage DV switch will be used for storage traffic such as our NFS NAS, our iSCSI SAN, and our VMware vSAN traffic, something that we'll be configuring later in the upcoming storage course here in the vSphere 8 learning path. And again, this is still a relatively simple design. In large production real-world environments, you might create many distributed virtual switches and many port groups connected to many different network adapters. But here, what we're configuring at the Wired Brain Coffee Company is something that might work better for this 3-host cluster that could scale on up to, for example, 13 hosts. So let's jump over into the vSphere client and get started with the configuration. Thus far, we've got 2 clusters here in the vSphere infrastructure, management and prod. The management cluster is where node 1 is located. This is where we run our management virtual machines, for example, Active Directory, DNS, and VMware vCenter. And then we have the production cluster down here, which so far is just a single ESXi host and a test virtual machine. Let's go ahead and remove this test virtual machine. And then we need to expand this management cluster. So let's add hosts to this cluster. We're going to add node 2, as well as node 3. We'll use the same credentials for all hosts and click Next. We'll accept the security alert, click OK. The hosts are found. Let's click Next to add the hosts and click Finish. Let's give this a moment to complete. And with that, our 2 new hosts have been added here successfully. They are currently in maintenance mode. Let's go ahead and right-click on them. We'll take them out of maintenance mode. All right, and we now have 3 hosts in our ESXi production cluster. With our new expanded cluster ready to go, we're going to now create our first distributed virtual switch. We'll do that by going to the networking inventory. Let's expand out our virtual data center, and you can see right now, we just have the VM network. This is our standard default port group. What we want to do here is to right-click on our virtual data center, and I'll go down and create a new distributed switch. Let's give this virtual switch a name. We'll call it prod. I'll click Next. And then notice here the version of the switch. With each subsequent version of the DV switch, you gain additional functionality. We're running vSphere 8 here across the board, so let's stick with the 8.0 version of the DV switch. We'll click Next, and then we have a number of options here regarding configuration. How many uplinks would we like configured on the switch? Would we like network I/O control enabled? Would we like to create a default port group? And if so, what's the name of the default port group that we'd like to assign? Let's go ahead and take all the defaults here for now. We'll click Next and click Finish. All right, and we immediately see our new prod or production virtual switch has been created. If we click on the DV switch, we get information here on the version of the switch, the number of networks, the number of hosts, the number of ports, and then important features such as network I/O control and NetFlow. If we click on Monitor, we can see any sort of issues related to the DV switch as well as the health. And then you can dig in deeper here into the distributed virtual port group that's been created, as well as the uplink group. We'll be digging more into all of this here in the rest of this module. And of course, if you ever want to delete a DV switch, you simply right-click on it and go down to Delete, and the entire configuration, including its port groups, will be gone. That's not something we want to do right now. In fact, let's go ahead and create one more DV switch. This one will be used for storage. Again, we'll take all the defaults, click Next, and Finish. All right, with our 2 DV switches created here at the WiredBrain Coffee Company, let's move on to our next lesson where you'll learn how to add and remove ESXi hosts to and from a DV switch.